again, everybody, and welcome to Tiger Sidelines on MC22. As always, I am joined by Dave Matter and Gabe DeArmond. My name is Bo Bayman. Welcome to the Sidelines after a win by the Missouri Tigers, breaking that 5-game losing streak against Kentucky. Larry Roundtree totes the rock 37 times, and the Tigers kind of beat Kentucky at their own game with the ground game and win it 20-10, a very impressive win by the Tigers over a favored Kentucky team at home, Dave. I was impressed with the game plan on Saturday.
Yeah, it looked like a different team, a different game than what they did 2 weeks earlier against LSU, and that's a credit to his coaching staff for not letting the ego get in the way to say, hey, we win one way, we win our way. They just went out and dominated the line of scrimmage. Their defense was outstanding. They were barely on the field at all. And the offense just kind of took it upon themselves to possess the ball the entire game. They stalled a few times in the red zone. The score could have been, more lopsided than it was, but it didn't need to be because, they just executed so well outside of, just not being great when they could have scored there on in the red zone a couple times.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the offense was led by Roundtree, 37 carries, 126 yards, 2 TDs. Kentucky ran a total of 36 offensive plays, Gabe. I mean, Larry had one more carry than they had plays. That's how you can beat that team, keep them off the field.
I've never seen a game quite like that. The more amazing part than that it happened was that somehow the final score was 20-10. If you looked at that box score, you would have thought that was 45-7. And there were varying reasons for that, which I think actually helps Eli Drinkwitz be able to say, yeah, look, we won and it's great, but there's some things we need to do better. I mean, Kentucky had the ball in the fourth quarter with the chance to tie the game, which is fairly stunning. Kentucky had 0 passing yards for the entire second and third quarter and really almost 0 passing yards outside of one play, if we're being honest. I think coming in, I think we talked about last week, the question was, can Kentucky beat you if you don't just hand them the football? And the answer pretty clearly is no, because that was Missouri deserves some credit for it, but that was a non-functional Division I offense on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Dave, you touched on this. This is 2 distinct game plans by the coaching staff. I mean, you want to talk about coaching up your talent. That's what they've done in the wins against LSU and Kentucky.
Yeah, I think it tells us a couple of things. I think maybe this roster, at least on offense, is maybe a little better than we gave them credit for at the beginning of the season. Having a good quarterback is part of that. But going into a game saying, okay, we just had this impressive win against LSU, we're going to scrap that and we're going to play a completely different style. They have the offensive line to do that. Who knew that going into the year? We knew they had running backs, Larry Roundtree and Tyler Beatty, and those guys, they weren't super efficient, and that was not Roundtree's best game of his career, but it was maybe his most important game. I mean, they just handed him the ball time after time again and told him, "Oh, go get 3 or 4 yards and just keep the clock moving, keep the chains moving," and give Drinkwitz credit. I mean, every coach comes out and says, "Hey, I've got a philosophy, I've got a system, but I'm going to, adapt to the talent." But not everyone really does that all the time. He absolutely did. And not just the talent, but the game circumstances, knowing that if Kentucky gets the ball, they might never give it back. We've seen them do that against good teams before, but to Missouri's credit, they just never gave them the ball. They held it the whole game. And when they did, the defense got off the field on third down, which has kind of been their specialty here these last few weeks.
And Gabe, I don't want to not talk about Connor Basilak. I thought that he was really good. I mean, if you want to call him a game manager in this game, he was. The thing that impressed me, and this is a small thing, but especially in the first half, when they were sustaining drives, it was 3rd and 6, and their receivers would run 7 yards, he'd hit them, and it would be a first down just to keep the chains moving. I thought he played very well.
Yeah, he was efficient. He did what had to be done to win the game. Maybe there was one, but I don't remember a ball that you really felt like, oh, that could have been intercepted. He only threw 3 passes more than 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and I honestly don't even remember 2 of them. I just remember the one kind of deep down the middle into the end zone that was overthrown. But he played a safe, smart game. The game plan clearly was, let's remove all the risk. Let's take away what Kentucky does best, which is make plays on balls that are kind of up for grabs in the secondary. So let's minimize the risk for interceptions, and let's see if they can beat us some other way. And they couldn't do it.
Yeah, no doubt. And let's switch to defense, Gabe. Nick Bolton led the team, and he's just been phenomenal. And if he's not halfway through the year, first team All-SEC, I don't know who is.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. It's funny. I mean, he was the SEC Defensive Player of the Week this week, and I don't know, he had 7 tackles. Like, nobody from Missouri had a great game because they were never out there, which obviously means they all played pretty well. But I just thought it was funny. This was the week Bolton got it, when he's been much more productive almost every other week, but he had a huge hit on the sideline. I forget if it was on Terry Wilson or Joey Gatewood, but he's clearly the heart and soul of that defense, which is playing a lot better than it was early. But this weekend we'll find out a little bit more, because Florida is a more representative test of an SEC offense than Kentucky was.
Yeah, no doubt. Dave, what do we make? Obviously, Georgia is the class of the SEC East, but here's how it's gone. Tennessee manhandles Missouri, then Kentucky manhandles Tennessee, and now Missouri beats Kentucky. I mean, it's really Georgia and then Florida, and everybody else can beat everybody else, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot that separates, 3 through 6 in the East. I mean, I put Vanderbilt in a class of its own, and put Georgia in a class of its own. Florida right behind them, but Georgia and Florida both have one loss right now. So if they play and they don't lose another game, Florida can still win the division. Florida still has LSU, I believe. So that game got postponed, and LSU looked better last week. So South Carolina had a loss last week, but they've had some decent wins. I don't think there's a whole lot that separates them. Missouri's playing a heck of a lot better now than when it played Tennessee, but that was still a 23-point margin. If they played tomorrow, Missouri's in a much better space right now and maybe wins that game. But again, who's the head of the middle class in the SEC East? For years, it's been Kentucky. Everybody thought it would be Tennessee this year. It very well could be Missouri by season's end.
And Gabe, as we move forward now, they're 2-2 on the year. Expectations have changed for this team, haven't they?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to do this, right? It's okay to say, hang on, let's go back and revisit, because if we picked them 3-7, well, we clearly didn't pick a win over LSU. I actually did preseason pick a win over Kentucky, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people thought they were going to be 0-4 if they were finishing 2-8 and 3-7. So it's okay to look and say, yeah, they should be better than that now. I mean, I think you probably project 4 or 5 wins now. But let's say they do lose to Mississippi State and South Carolina and end up 4-6. That's going to seem, as of today, it's going to seem a little bit probably disappointing. But you also have to think back to 2 months ago and realize, hey, that's still a pretty decent first year. I don't think it's you hope for better than that, but I don't think it's really fair if that's where they end up to say you're disappointed in it.
Yeah, no question. And especially to me, the win over LSU buys so much, credibility. Don't you think so? No matter what else happens this year. Now, obviously, you don't want to go 2-8, but that win on its own, no matter what LSU does, just has so much gravitas, don't you think?
It's huge, especially nationally, but I don't know if you guys agree with this. The LSU win is bigger. The Kentucky win, to me, was more impressive and is more important for this program. It's a division, like, you're going to play LSU once every 7 years, and this is kind of a down LSU team, and whatever. The name brand value is obviously big, but Kentucky, I mean, Missouri chased down some ghosts in that game because anybody that was watching that game, when Kentucky got the ball back down 17-10, you said, oh, man, I've seen this before. This is the 6th straight year Missouri's going to find some messed up way to lose to Kentucky. And the fact that they didn't do it carries some value. And again, we talked about last week, the first thing you've got to do in this division is catch Kentucky before you worry about those other teams.
And one of the teams they have to worry about, Dave, is Florida. And it's been reported that the Tigers will only have 64 scholarship players available this week. Florida hasn't played in a couple of weeks because of quarantine. The game is still on for Saturday. What do we expect first of all, out of the Tigers, and then second of all, out of a well-rested Gators team?
Well, Drinkwitz gave us that number 64 early in the week, and he said it was only two fewer than they had against Kentucky. So they're not going to have two players available. We don't necessarily know who those are. He didn't want to give an injury report this week. We did see two starters along the offensive line go out in the Kentucky game. They're both listed as starters, Xavier Delgado and Larry Borum on the depth chart, which means nothing. So we don't really know, and probably won't until they're out on the field in the swamp for pregame warmups. But I think it's fair to say we know a lot less about Florida at this point. I don't think they've even released a depth chart as of when we tape this on Wednesday. Who knows, how many players are still actually in quarantine. They haven't practiced before Monday of this week for 2 weeks. So it would be silly to think that they're not going to be rusty to some degree. Now, defensively, they've been rusty all year. They've given up a lot of yards, second most in the SEC. Offensively, they've been really good. But this may be similar to Missouri's game against LSU, kind of a shootout type game that, somebody's defense is going to have to make a play in the end. So it's really hard to say. But I would feel a lot – if I were a Missouri fan, I'd feel a lot better about my team going into this game just because you've seen what they can do these last couple of weeks. Florida is a complete mystery.
I thought, too, another aspect of the Kentucky win is it's nice to see your team play well out of a bye week. How many times do they look rusty? But, Dave, I thought they looked pretty good against Kentucky, and we'll see what Florida, after 2 weeks off, looks like this coming Saturday.
Yeah, and Missouri still practiced during their bye week. That's the difference with Florida. They weren't able to do anything. They had Zoom meetings, and, who knows what you can actually get accomplished during those. To Gabe's point about the Kentucky win being more impressive, I agree, especially with the defense. Missouri's defense played well on 4 snaps against LSU, and they were okay before that. But they gave up a lot of yards. Against Kentucky, they were good for 4 quarters. I mean, they gave up the one pass, and that was it. So that is a group that, has gotten better as the season has gone along. And they've got to play better at Florida, obviously. But I'd be feeling pretty good if I was on that Missouri defense, if I were Ryan Walters right now with what he's seen.
Yeah, no doubt. The line for the game is Florida minus 13 on Wednesday morning. Florida still is ranked number 10, but you want to talk about a time to catch a team, Gabe. This might be it.
Yeah, you have to be careful not to think that, right? I mean, people thought that about the Tennessee Titans. I think Buffalo did and got blown off the field. I mean, we have this season, the only thing I ever remember from high school math is the transitive property, right? And just because A beat B and B beat C doesn't mean A is going to beat C. It just doesn't work. Every year we say, these are 20-year-old kids. What happened last Saturday really has almost no impact on what happens next Saturday. It's more true than it's ever been. I mean, we've already seen, 13 of the 14 teams in this league have a loss. 10 of the 14 have 2. It's 10 completely different kind of single pop quizzes every Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. As we look at other games coming up this week, Georgia's at Kentucky, LSU's at Auburn, Ole Miss is at Vandy, Mississippi State is at Alabama, and Arkansas is at Texas A&M. That's a pretty decent slate. There's not really any heavyweight matchup, but a pretty good slate this week. And the Missouri-Florida game is on SEC alternate channel, so that's kind of a fit-em-in game at 6:30, I would imagine.
I mean, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. I assume that's because that game wasn't supposed to be played, and they just had to, they didn't necessarily want to move 6 other games around to fit Missouri-Florida in, which it's a fine game, but I don't know if it's better than a lot of the other ones.
Yeah, I agree with that. And let's talk big picture college football. I mean, we saw the Big Ten come back. Now we've seen some cases at Wisconsin, and they're talking about their starting quarterback who threw, 5 touchdowns last week. He's got to sit out 3 weeks now with a positive test per Big Ten rules. I still wonder if we make it to the finish line this year.
As much criticism as maybe the SEC took for playing games early and for moving forward with the season, it's still, and they've had to move games. Missouri knows that better than anybody. It still looks like they kind of went about things the prudent way of, putting in some bye weeks in there, not starting the season as early as the ACC and the Big 12 did, and the Sun Belt and a few others, but still, getting started so they don't have to cram it all in at the end. The Big Ten, and you hope they can get it done, but at some point there's going to be canceled games in that league. I just don't see how they can avoid it. Wisconsin, who looked so good in that opening week. I mean, they looked like a playoff team in that game. Granted, it was against Illinois. They lost to Illinois last year. And then now they lose the star quarterback who looked great, Graham Mertz, for 3 weeks. I mean, SEC fans don't like when players have to go into quarantine for 10 days or 14 days. Try having 21 days. So it could wreck your whole season. But this is what they signed up for when they decided to come back later than everybody else, except for the Pac-12, I guess, which still hasn't started.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take a break right here on Tiger Sidelines. We have some tweets from our fans, and we'll get to those next. You're watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22. Welcome back to Tiger Sidelines, everybody. I'm Bo Bayman, and joined as always by Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter. And we're at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter. We ask for your tweets every single week, and our first one comes from Steve, who says, and this is for both of you, what's Mizzou's bowl chances this season if they go 5-5?
I mean, they're 100%.
Yeah. There are no bowl requirements this year, so I don't really know how they're going to do it. Is it just going to go back to the Big 12 way of whoever sells the most tickets gets to go to the best games outside of the playoffs? I don't know.
But are you going to even be able to sell tickets for? I mean, I'm still convinced.
Right, exactly.
I'm still convinced some of these bowls are going to say we're going to lose too much money. We can't do this. We don't know how many bowl games there are going to be, but again, like there are no requirements. You can go 0-10. Nebraska could lose every game, and if tickets can be sold, some game is going to go, well, hey, it's Nebraska. They'll show up. Let's invite them over this 5-5 team.
I think they're going to try to sell it as, hey, we didn't get non-conference games this year because of COVID, so everyone's just going to get one extra non-conference game. And if you want to buy your team some rings and T-shirts because of it, if you win or lose, then go for it.
Because that's a great look for athletic departments that are screaming about how much money they're losing. Is let's take everybody to Birmingham to play Wake Forest.
Right.
The next one is from Kyle. Do you think the unexpected bye last week makes Florida weaker or stronger?
We don't know. I mean,
nope. Yeah.
I think if we just don't know. I mean, they had 25 players were positive. We don't know how many necessarily were asymptomatic or symptomatic. I mean, the head coach had COVID. Dan Mullen had COVID. He said he was fine, but I don't know. They've got to be rusty, you would think. But like Gabe said, maybe with the Tennessee Titans, maybe being rested is more important than being rusty. So who knows?
Isn't it amazing how quickly, and like, I'm not blaming fans for this because I think we've all done it too, how quickly we've just turned this into a regular college football season. And how did these 22 kids with COVID impact our team's chances to win a game? I mean,
and we don't even know which players had it.
Right. And again, I'm not like trying to shame anybody. We've all done it. And it's kind of nice to feel like we're in the middle of an actual sports season. But it's weird how we all thought we'd just be at a point where we're like, let's just have games. The rest doesn't even matter. Oh, no, nobody feels that way anymore. Kentucky fans are not happy just to have games after last week.
Right.
Yeah, no question. And as we were talking in the break, I mean, we're 8 months into this thing, and we're still wondering what's going on. Things are being pushed back. It's a 0 year across the board for all athletes in college. I mean, there's still so many things that are up in the air.
Absolutely. Starting with college basketball season. I mean, we'll get to that eventually, I think. I don't know if there's going to be non-conference games or how many there's going to be. I mean, we know Missouri's going to play TCU in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. So, yeah, mark your calendars for that matchup. But otherwise, we don't really know much, and it's almost November.
And, hey, for all the talk of everything that's been impacted by this, let's be clear. There must be an NCAA tournament this year.
Right.
If there is not an NCAA tournament, I mean, the financial model for that sport after 2 straight years, and I understand there's some insurance and stuff, but I don't know how it keeps working if you don't find a way to play that tournament.
You think that will probably be in a bubble? Do they go bubble scenario?
They've already trademarked Battle in the Bubble as a slogan, so we know what they're planning to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the only way you can do it. I mean, you've seen, and they've seen the success of the NBA getting everybody in the same spot. But that being said, Dave, I saw you saw this, I think it was earlier this week, that there were some preseason bubble tournaments in Orlando that have already been called off.
Yeah, and Missouri was supposed to play in one. Still up in the air what's going to happen with that. They've been in multiple tournaments now that are either scratched or expected to be scratched. There's just so much uncertainty. And I think some of these conferences were just so consumed with football and getting that off the ground because it means so much, obviously, that basketball was maybe put on the back burner a little bit. And you got different rules in different conferences, as far as the testing and the protocols and how many days you have to quarantine, that non-conference games are going to be difficult to get together. I mean, conference games, I think, will be a lot easier because everyone's working under the same rules for the most part, but non-conference games, those could really be in jeopardy.
And Gabe, let's be honest, there's not a lot of talk about college basketball right now. The Missouri Tigers have been practicing for a while, and we really don't know much, do we?
No, I mean, the season's supposed to start, less than a month, and we don't even know, like Dave said, we know one game that may or may not happen. I think it's also, I don't know about you guys, it takes me until the bragging rights game to really get into college basketball anyway, and I cover it. The truth is college football is a mainstream sport. College basketball is a fringe sport now that appeals to the diehards. This is not 1985 with Patrick Ewing and Sherman Douglas and Chris Mullen and everything. I mean, it is much more of a niche sport. Now, it's a niche sport that makes a lot of money because of TV, but especially once, and I think we all saw this coming, but once Missouri moved to the SEC, dude, October and November are football time. I mean, It just, you can't be in this league outside of Lexington, Kentucky, and be thinking about college basketball in October.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some places that don't think about college basketball. They're thinking about early fall baseball more than they think of college basketball in the SEC. That's just the tall and the short of it. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the other sports that are going on. We'll talk about the top 10 ranked volleyball team. When we come back, you're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines. Dave, Gabe, and Bo here for you. Let's talk a little volleyball. The volleyball team finally got started last week. 2 matches against Alabama on the road. They won the first one 3-1. They won the second one in a sweep 3-0. And the Tigers sweep the SEC Player of the Week awards. I mean, you talked about Kylie DeBerg, Andrea Fuentes, Emily Brown, Tiana, I always say her name wrong, Omachich or something like that. And they got all the awards. They host, as we always say, we tape this on Wednesday. They host Kentucky for 2 matches tonight and tomorrow. So by the time this airs, they play, I want to say number 3 Kentucky a couple of times, but still a good start, and they are finally underway with SEC volleyball.
It's kind of a shame that I know people told me this might be the best team they've ever had, or one of the best teams they've ever had, but they've had this shortened season where they're not going to get as much attention. They haven't even played at home, prior to us taping this. So we'll see what they can do. I mean, they still have a great shot at making the NCAA postseason. We'll see what that's like. But a top 10 team. I don't know. Like we said before we taped this, I'm not sure how many teams nationally are playing, but they're top 10. That's what counts.
So they have Kentucky this week, Arkansas this coming Wednesday and Thursday as well. Women's soccer draws again with Mississippi State, 1-1. The Tigers are now 1-2-2 on the year. They'll host Kentucky on Sunday, November 1st at noon, and that game will actually be on the SEC network again. The Tigers have looked better this year. They just have to me, find a few more wins against SEC opponents if they want to see the postseason this year, Gabe.
Especially when all you play is SEC opponents.
Yep. Your strength of schedule will be fine. Just get a couple of wins and you'll be there.
But isn't the postseason for all these sports like later on in the spring?
It is.
Like, they're not doing championships in the fall. So
Right.
It's just kind of like they play their games and then pick up some non-conference games and try to get back in shape, and it's a year-round sport. I still don't really understand why they're playing, to be honest.
Yeah, it does seem a little odd that they're playing now rather than in the spring, especially when other teams are going to play their whole year in the spring and then be ready for the championships. All right, let's pick some games. 4-pack of picks. Let's start with Georgia at Kentucky. How does Kentucky rebound after the loss to Missouri, Gabe?
Not well. Not very far. They'll lose by more than they lost by last week. Look, if they couldn't move the ball against Missouri, and I don't mean any disrespect to Missouri's defense, which played very well, but Georgia's got maybe the best defense in the country. I'm not sure Kentucky scores in this game unless they do it on defense.
If Missouri can out Kentucky, Georgia can very well out Kentucky.
No doubt about it. Dave, number 3, Ohio State is at number 18, Penn State. Penn State loses by, I guess you could say, an eyelash last week to Indiana. So this was going to be a top 10 battle, Ohio State and Penn State. Penn State sort of dropped their end of the bargain.
Yeah, that was really bad for the Big Ten because now they've got one superpower. Maybe you call Wisconsin one, but they lost some luster with Mertz. So Ohio State's going to roll. I mean, there's nothing's going to stop them until they get to the playoffs. They're one of the best teams in the country, and Penn State looked a lot more like a pretender last week.
Gabe, we talked about Wisconsin at Nebraska. Wisconsin maybe on a 4th-string quarterback if they even play this game. Who knows? But Nebraska has a chance to pull a win against the top 10 team, albeit in the COVID era, but still this is a chance for Nebraska, I guess.
I mean, I guess. Like you said, I'm not sure they're going to play. It's really interesting, like Dave was talking about with Penn State. The SEC is really in the same situation where they've got a whole bunch of teams that the only way a second team makes the playoff is to beat Alabama. I mean, truthfully, the SEC team with the best chance to make the playoff outside of Alabama is Texas A&M because they don't have to play them again. They could actually make it by not playing the SEC title game. So this is the year you're either going to see a 2-loss team in the playoffs or you're going to see like Cincinnati or BYU. Like a group. And look, if there's ever a year, I'd love to throw one of those. I hope Cincinnati goes unbeaten. Throw them in, see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last one, obviously, Missouri at number 10, Florida. Gabe, I'll start with you. Can the Tigers get win number 3 in a row?
How do you predict a game where we legitimately have no idea who's playing for the other team?
Yeah.
I mean, is Kyle Trask one of these guys that might be out? Is Kyle Pitts? I don't even know how to begin to pick this game. So I guess you just take the approach that Eli Drinkwitz said he's taking. You just assume they have everybody. All their top guys are playing. You assume they're at full strength. And if they're not, then you adjust after that. So I guess in Gainesville, full strength Florida, I would pick to beat Missouri. Missouri's played well, but again, week to week, you never know. I think 15 is a little bit high for a line. I think this is probably like a 10-point game, but I'd probably pick Florida like, I don't know, 34-24.
Dave, what say you?
Yeah, you got to assume that Florida's going to have their main guys ready. And if they are, I don't care how many games they've missed. That's a really explosive offense. I mean, they just get better and better under Dan Mullen. Wouldn't shock me, though, if Missouri goes down there and plays really well. They've done it before. We've seen Missouri go down there when they were expected to get crushed, coming off that Kentucky loss a couple of years ago, went down there and played probably the best game of the Odom years. Drew Lock's probably his best game ever. Different year, obviously, different team, different quarterback, but I expect Florida to win at this point, but 2020, nothing would shock me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. One thing you can say, no matter who plays, the Tigers cannot turn the ball over, can't be dropping punts, can't give Florida extra chances no matter what happens. We will talk about it next week on Tiger Sidelines. That'll do it for today. For Brian and Matt behind the scenes, and for Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter, I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks for joining us on the Sidelines. This has been Tiger Sidelines on MC22.